We're here to mourn the loss of a very special woman, Cindy Roller, Shindel Bela Bazalka Halevi, who had a tragic death, a tragic accident death over the last few days. In the song Eshes Chayil that we sing every Friday night, we make mention of the line, Rabos Banos Osu Chayil, Vi'at Olis Al Kulana. Many daughters have accomplished well, but you surpassed them all. And I think it's fair to say that Cindy personified this line in this verse. Let me tell you how. When we talk about relationships, we talk about three different kinds of relationships. There's what we refer to as Bein Adam La'atzmo, between man and himself or herself. Bein Adam L'Chavero, between man and his fellow man. And Bein Adam L'Makom, between man and God. Cindy excelled in all three. In terms of Bein Adam La'atzmo, in terms of herself, she was very much at peace with herself. Despite the challenges and the adversity she had in life, she had a very positive outlook. She was a strong, determined woman, bright, sophisticated. Bein Adam L'Chavero, between herself and her friends. Everyone loved Cindy. Look at the crowd. In the hospital, every time I came down to the hospital, the room was full. Relatives and friends just wanting to be there for Cindy. Her devotion to her family was unbelievable. Her parents, they should have long and healthy lives. How she took care of them, moving them into her home, day in and day out, night and day, day and night. But not only that, giving them a sense of privacy and a sense of dignity as well. Her devotion to Lindsay and AJ was unbelievable, very, very special. And her devotion to Ken was also unbelievable. We read in another verse in Eshes Chayil, Gomalasu tov v'lo ra kol yemei chayeha. She bestows on him, on her husband, good and no harm all the days of his life. And Rav Hirsch asks, is that really true? Can it be? Even in a good marriage, there are good days, and there's sometimes not such good days. But says Rav Hirsch, a true woman of valor is always good, even despite the difficult days. But she brings a sense of peace, a sense of serenity, a sense of love, of warmth into the home. And that's what Cindy was all about. Cindy was the glue that held her family together. And then the third category, Bein Adam L'Makom, the relationship between man and God. Cindy was a very spiritual individual, climbed the ladder of spirituality, always yearning and searching for more, brought up her family in that way, raised her family to yearn and to search for more. Cindy loved the outdoors, as we all know, and she loved horseback riding. It was one of her loves. And it's so ironic or so tragic, or maybe not, that's in a sense how her life came to an end. May she be a true Melita Yosher. May she look down from heaven and continue to protect Kenny, the children, her very special and beloved parents, her brother, her extended family, all of her friends who loved her so deeply, her community, and the Jewish people. May she be a true Melita Yosher. May she go in front of the heavenly court, if she hasn't done it already, and said, God, enough suffering, enough difficulties. We end with the verse, Mocha Hashem Elokim Dima Me'al Kapanim. We pray for the day when God will wipe away all tears from our faces. Unfortunately, that's not today. Someone commented to me earlier today, this is the month of Adar. It's supposed to be the month of joy. It's been a very difficult Adar. I'd like to ask Rabbi Yaakov Feitman, very close to the family, a Rav of the Roller family, who's come from New York to share some thoughts and insights, very personal insights to the family. Rabbi Feitman will speak from outside as he is a Kohen.
Thank you, Rabbi Bernstein, Kenny, Lindsay, AJ, Mr. and Mrs. Gale. Cindy was the grandmother, Stella and Hugo, beloved sister. We read last Shabbos, just yesterday. Moshe Rabbeinu asked the question of the day, Hodieni nos d'rochecha ve'edoacha, hareini nos kvodecha. And Chazal say, our sages ask, and Moshe Rabbeinu asked, Rasha v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo, where is the justice in the world? And it's a good question. It's a valid question. And I dare say, anybody that heard the story of Cindy over the last couple of days, Shendel Bela Basal Kalevi, asked that question as well. She was indeed, and to my family was always, not just now in death, but in life, a tzaddikus, a very, very righteous woman, a wonderful woman, always searching, as Rabbi Bernstein alluded, always growing in her Yiddishkeit, in her Menschlichkeit, in everything that she touched. And we know that the Torah tells us, Yismach leiv mevakshe Hashem, joyousness, happiness, indeed, the highest of madregos, of spiritual levels, are attained through searching. And she spent a lifetime searching. And now in her illness for a couple of days, which can't really even be called an illness, but an event, a tragic event, I can tell you, and I'm sure many of you have heard from Lindsay and from AJ, that they testified to me and to others that she wanted everything to be done exactly according to halacha. And Rabbi Bernstein and I, over the last couple of days, tragic, difficult days, have struggled to really keep up with the request that she made. And I was brought in as a friend, as a former Rav of theirs, but also because I had written with her many years ago a halachic living will. And she insisted at the time in going over it with her wonderful children, her beloved children, word for word, line for line, somehow being a Neviah, somehow prophesizing that she knew what was going to happen at some point and wanted to make sure that everything that can be done would be done, and especially according to Jewish law. Rabbi Bernstein and I consulted with great poskim, great halachic experts, and the decisions that we made were not easy. But they were what she would have wanted, and now as she goes in front of the Kisei HaKavod, the heavenly throne, we know that she will be welcomed because of her life and also because of the manner in which she died. Everything was al pi Torah, everything was proper. There's a story told about several Gerer Rebbes. One of them was the Sfas Emes, who died young. And after the funeral, after the Levaya, his two sons, the Imrei Emes, Rebbe Avram Mordechai Alter, who later on became the Rebbe, and his brother Reb Moshe Betzalel were walking. And the Imrei Emes said to his brother, Der Tate hat gehat arichas yomim. Our father lived long. And Reb Moshe Betzalel looked at his brother and said, what do you mean? He didn't live long at all. He lived a shortened life. He died, and we really needed him for longer. And the Imrei Emes said to his brother, I didn't say Arichas Shonim, I said our father had Arichas Yomim. Every day, counted. Every day was significant. Every day was a model lesson in how to live. I'm not too good at the texting and the emails, but my children sent me messages from our years in Cleveland, being close to the Rollers, to Kendi, should live and be well, Cindy, Allah Shalom. One of my daughters wrote as follows. She picked us up. She knew that we came from a large family that didn't have much and made us feel like $1 million. For a little girl from a large family, it was like winning the lottery. She brought us new PJs for the Seder, because we had the privilege of having the Rollers and the Gales over for our Sidarim for quite a few years. And they not only enhanced the Seder, but Cindy gave it that spirituality that Rabbi Bernstein spoke so eloquently of, the sense of searching that all of us should keep up throughout life until God decides that the person has reached the pinnacle, the person has reached as high as they can go in this world, and they're ready to come close to God completely. One of the answers that God gave to Moshe Rabbeinu was Ki lo yurani ha'adam v'chai. No person can see God and live. And interestingly, there's a custom in almost the entire world, no matter what culture, what religion, and where in the world, that we close the eyes of the person that passed away. I think there's a picture of them closing Abraham Lincoln's eyes and putting some pennies there, from which arose a tradition, the Lincoln penny. And what is that all about? So our sages teach, because when a person dies, there's a moment where every single person encounters the Lord. And after that, it's not appropriate to see anything that's corporeal, that's material, anything below the level of God himself. And we know that since Cindy was searching for Hashem her whole life, she was searching for the proper life, the proper deeds, the proper mitzvos, the proper chinuch, what is right. Now when she approached Hashem, there's no question that she saw him, and God was misameach with her. He was happy with her. Yismach leiv mevakshe Hashem. And then it says, in the same psukim that we read yesterday, the day that she was struggling between life and death, V'ra'isa sachorai ufanai lo ra'yero. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to see me, you want to encounter me. So I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock. And then as I pass by, you can see my back, but you can't see my face. And the Chassam Sofer very, very famously says that what it means is that when something is happening that's tragic, it's impossible to understand. But later, sometimes with months, with years, and sometimes with decades and centuries, we will begin to understand. And what I say to the family today is that this is incomprehensible at the moment. But maybe someday, with elevation, with a year of mourning that is incumbent upon the children, with all of the avelus, the mourning and the study, and the various prayers that will be said, we will all become a little bit wiser. And so, Kenny and Lindsay, AJ, this is now incomprehensible, but someday we will understand why this happened to your mother and why she had to leave this world. And perhaps, just perhaps, since her life was so bound up with bringing life into the world, I remember when she started what she called catching babies. Remember that? And she said, I caught my first baby yesterday. And she glowed with an otherworldly fire. So proud. And later, when she became better at it, she taught others the midwifery. And besides all the babies that she brought into this world, all the babies that her students brought into this world, those are all lives that are here because of her. And we can't even imagine the zechus, the tremendous merit of such a person. Cindy's simcha at doing mitzvahs was unbelievable. Her joy, which radiated from her face, that also radiates from yesterday's parsha. And there's an amazing Da'asikenim Mibali Atosfos, one of our earliest medieval commentaries, that writes that when the women brought their contributions to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle, so the Da'asikenim writes, Hanoshim Semechos, women, holy Jewish women, Noshim Tzidkanios, Semechos Uzehiros B'Melecha Shamayim, Lefichach Zochu Anoshim Shalolasos Melacha B'Rosh Chodesh. Because they're so happy and they're so joyous when they do mitzvahs. That was Cindy. I saw it at our Siddharim. I don't know if anybody in my house ate a piece of matzah like she did. Some people like the matzah, some people like the food that comes later, the Shulchan Orech. But she made that bracha on the matzah, recognizing that it was something that connected her to Hashem. And that was what we say later on in the same parsha, the parsha of her life and death. There was a very strange thing that the women did when they offered the wool that came off of the goats. This was a very special type of a fabric. So what they did was, Rashi says, that Naso Liban Asana B'chachma Tavu Esoizim, and Rashi says, it was an Umnas Yisera Shemei Al Gabi Izim Tavin Asan. They took the women. They were the only ones that were able to do this. They took from the goats and they put it right onto wherever it was going, to the Holy Tabernacle. And one wonders why. Why can't you just do it the normal way? You have to go right from the animal to the tabernacle. And the answer is that the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Chia, when he was making a Sefer Torah, he went out and he captured the animal, and then he took the hides, and then he wrote, and he did everything that had to be done, because he knew that to perpetuate the Torah, to perpetuate holiness and sanctity, you have to do everything properly, as Cindy did in her life, and amazingly, miraculously, even in death. And then finally, also in the Parsha, we find that the women were the ones that donated something that at first Moshe Rabbeinu was going to reject. It was the mirrors that were used for the Maros Hatzovos, for that which would purify the Kohanim, which would purify those that would offer the sacrifices. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, these are mirrors. They're used for vanity. They're not used for holiness. And on the contrary, Hashem said, Moshe Rabbeinu, as wise as he was, the women understood over here why the mirrors can bring children into the world, as Cindy did so beautifully and so wonderfully. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, God said, Kabel ki elu chavivim olai. These are beloved to me. Her death was a death of holiness. And we were talking about it on the phone, Kenny, Lindsay. We were talking about the fact that miraculously she didn't suffer. It was the kind of a death where immediately she was put out of her pain, even though she lived for a while longer. And she, very often, through the homeopathy that she would help other people with, even once we remembered in the family, in our family, a little bird that she nursed back to health with the arnica that she used to give out to whoever needed it. And I see some of you remember that. We had it in our family also. But that little bird signified the love that she had for every living thing and every living creature, from the horses to the dogs. And that signifies what many women today do. They sing and they say the Perek Shira, the song of the universe, the song of every single creature. And Cindy was such a person that was able, somehow or other, to encompass human beings and even the animals that she loved so much. So, so unique that she was, and so very, very special. She always had a sense that Hashem was with her and that she was never alone. And one thing that I learned over here in town from the Telzer Yeshiva was one time I went to be Menachem Avel to pay a Shiva call to one of the Telzer, the greats, that was sitting alone. And he said to me, somebody just made a mistake. He said, Amakom Yenachem Eschem. May in the plural you be consoled amongst the mourners. He said in Telz we say, Hamakom Yenachem. He said, Oscha, I'm sorry, he said in the singular. He said, we say it in the plural because you're never alone, even if you're sitting alone, because God is always with you. And she always had God with her. That amazing smile that was never judgmental. Only God can judge. The Maharal tells us that we can imitate and emulate God in chesed, in loving kindness, but never ever in being judged and never judging others, because only God can judge. And Cindy taught that to all of us. Rabbi Bernstein mentioned how much Cindy did for her parents, and I just want to mention, as I'm sure Rabbi Bernstein meant as well, that Kenny was such a wonderful son-in-law, taking in the Gales, but also realizing that it's something that was mutually beautiful. The tremendous kibbut aim that they both gave to their parents. And this was the unconditional love, like Hashem gave to the world. And the Derech Hashem says that, in fact, when God created the world, he created it as a work of unconditional love for the world. Hashem loved the world, Hashem loved everybody in the world, and so he created us so that we could also partake in his holy work of doing for others as Cindy did. And finally, if I may close with the words that we reject, but a terrible person named Bilam wanted to do. He said, Tamas nafshi mos yesharim. I'd like to die like the Yesharim, the holy righteous ones. But he didn't live that way, so he couldn't die that way. He lived a life of depravity, and therefore he had to die a terrible death. Cindy died without pain, surrounded by the creatures that she loved, surrounded by the ability to be kind to those creatures, and I'm sure that she was to the very end. And therefore she died a most Yesharim, a death of the righteous. We will all miss her, I'm sure. My family will miss every word that she said and every gesture that she ever made, and we will never forget her. Tehenash Shetzura B'tzar Achayim. May her memory be a blessing, and may she be with the Lord forevermore.
I'd like to ask David, her brother, to say a few words.
Well, the first 5 years of my life, I was an only child. Then things changed dramatically. Cindy came into my life. As a child, I was very excited and enjoyed having a baby sister. Then as my early teenage years, I found I had to babysit from time to time. I wasn't quite as excited. But as we grew older together and we connected, we had many, many good times. I got involved helping her. I never rode horses much, but I got involved helping her, and my folks would always get me to be the guy who would take her to the horse show and drive the trailer and haul the horses out there. So I did have a love for horses with her, and I learned a lot about it, but never got serious about horses like she did. Well, as a rabbi said, Cindy is the glue that keeps our family together. And I have to disagree a little bit and say she was more than the glue. She was the gorilla glue that kept us together. You know, through the years of family, she had so many good things, holidays at the house, keeping us together when there were disagreements, connecting us all. She had so many friends and so many different connections, from her practice to the family, to friends, to the horse people. It was just amazing. These last 5 days, as I sat at her bedside, watching and sitting with her, just amazed me how so many different people were there and sitting with her, holding her hand, and being there to help us, to help Kenny and myself and my wife and AJ and Lindsay and my parents. It was just amazing. She just had such a wonderful connection. Most important, as my parents got older, she was there to help and take care of them. I just owed her so much for doing that for us and being there for them all the time. I promise that I will step up and fill her shoes and help Kenny and the kids and my wife. We will take good care of my parents as time goes on. We're all going to miss her just terribly, terribly. Thank you, Rabbi.
Lindsay?
There's really not much I can add. I think everybody has, from Rabbi Bernstein and Rabbi Feitman and anybody who has ever met my mother, which I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be here if you hadn't, knows that I know that I am by far one of the luckiest human beings on this planet. I got to learn from my mother, not just things that parents teach their kids, but even just in watching her, in the way that she acted, the way that she treated people, the way that she treated animals. There's a standing rule in their house that if there's a spider or a flea or a fly, or not that they have bugs, but it happens, and it is understood that you will do whatever you can to capture that being and take it back to where it goes, outside or wherever, because you didn't dare step on one of God's creatures in my mother's home. And that, my mom extended that to every part of her life. And with such a humility I've never known before in my life. My kids would really rather, there's really not a person in this world that they would run to faster than my dad. He is Grandpa. They are, and she never once it never bothered her. She wanted him to have that. She wanted him to be Grandpa and the special. The interesting thing is that when we named, when you're deciding names to call your parents, when you have kids, so I kept, what do you think, if he wants to be Grandpa, what do you want to be? And she thought about it for a minute and she said, I want to be Safi. Well, it was Safti, but like in a very possessive way. Both of my children changed that to Safi, and so now it is Safi. And I am so sad that they will not get to learn about life from her by seeing her, but I am so confident that they will get to learn about life through her and about her from our family. This is an excruciating experience, and there is no greater peace that I could ever have than to know that my mother didn't suffer. And she left this earth, I believe, doing what she loved more than almost anything in this whole world on a beautiful sunny day in February in Cleveland, which does not happen all that often. And now she gets to go. I don't know where we go, but I know that she is with the biggies. She is with the biggies. And there is a whole slew of God's creatures waiting for her. And I am just sad that we don't get to have her anymore. Thank you.
AJ?
My mother has always been the strongest person that I know, as long as I can remember. She had an undying love for her family and friends and would do anything for them. Her friends were her family, and she instilled that in myself and my sister. Because she did so, we both have built our own village, as Mom and I called it. Her faith in God was so strong that she knew what she had to do. She told me repeatedly how lucky she was to see the eyes of God every time she delivered a baby. She was strong and unwavering in her beliefs and loved to share about Judaism with anyone who asked questions with a great passion. My mother was and always will be my best friend. She taught me so much, how to love unconditionally, find forgiveness even when it seemed to be the hardest thing to do, and to have confidence in myself and trust that who I am is exactly who I was meant to be. On our many occasions to be on long road trips, she told me that we are brought into this world to accomplish certain things and to fix or get things right that perhaps we hadn't before. I'm terribly saddened for myself and my family that it took such a short time for her to do so, but so grateful to God that her struggles were few and her life was so joyful. I know she will always be around, directing me when I'm lost and helping me to strive to live a life as wonderful as she did. And I can only hope that I will be able to find joy in as many of the small things as she did, as opposed to looking in joy in things that really are as insignificant as sometimes I find them to be.
Ken?
I did this once before when my mother passed away. It wasn't very easy then either. Before I say anything about my dear wife Cindy, I want to thank Rabbi Bernstein and Rabbi Feitman. They were unbelievable in helping us work through what we had to work through. Yehuda Lindenberg, if you're out there, if you're not, he was incredibly helpful to the process. We were really struggling. And the people in that room, my family, those people know how to step up. So, I apologize because I haven't slept in about 2 days, so I'm a little bit, and for 40 years of work, I had a phenomenal secretary. Her name was Sue Rossman, who could read my writing when I couldn't. And she was unavailable, I think, this morning. So if you'll bear with me a little bit. So I said a few things, and, like, what is good fortune? It's something everyone in this room has had by being part of Cindy Shano Balabas Zalkal Levy's life, as she had great fortune for all of you. I wrote down some words to describe her. Even in the, with a breathing apparatus, a neck brace, tubes all over the place, everyone commented how elegant she was, because she is. She's modest. She has known what sneus is, which is modesty, before she even heard of the word. Bright. She was, from a woman who, at high school, they had about 190 kids in the class. She was about fifth or sixth from the bottom, to eventually getting her doctorate in nursing, after getting her master's, after or 2 or 3. She has more letters than an alphabet after her name. Committed. I've never seen a more committed person in my life. Committed to her family, committed to our marriage. I've told many people I describe our marriage as a Cleveland road. You go along, and then there's a little pothole, and then there's a little pothole, and then once in a while, you hit a really big pothole like the one out where she rides bikes with Lindsay, and you break the wheel and the tire and the axle. But she's committed. I've never met a more honest person than her. Ever. Ever. Helping, she'll help anybody do anything. From, by the way, Rabbi, that bird has a name. Chaim Zipper. And he lives in a tree in our yard. Helping, that's all she does. Kibud av v'aim, helping. Nobody, we have wonderful people in our community. I know many people take their parents and try and help. Partially because of her understanding of medicine and all that, and nursing. She's a caring person. She just was unbelievable. And today somebody said something, her cousins from New York are here, and mentioned their youngest daughter, Sophia, and it reminded me of something. We were at it reminded me of two things. One time we were at a kiddush underneath at Yavna, and a woman starts choking and choking and choking. There were about 25 doctors in the room, and they're all looking at each other like, well, they don't know what to do. This woman's starting to turn blue, and my wife gets up and goes and does a Heimlich maneuver and saves her life. I don't eat short ribs and cholent, Rabbi, anymore. She also, we were in a restaurant in New York, that's what reminded me of it, and we're watching, there was a grandmother with her granddaughter at another table eating something, and all of a sudden, we see this panic, and my wife gets up and again does the Heimlich maneuver and saves her life. She brought life into the world, and she saved life. In many respects, she saved my life many times. Supportive. I wrote a bunch of other things here too, like the rabbis both alluded to how totally certain of everything about Hashem there was, never questioning a thing. When her she did a little stint in oncological nursing because her grandmother was ill with cancer and she wanted to be able to take care of her properly. And she would ask her grandmother, she said, Grandma, are you afraid to die? Her grandmother wasn't afraid to die because she also was a tzaddikas. And she said, no, I'm good with God. I believe in him. I try to do what he asks of me, and it was amazing. She is truly spiritual. Everybody mentions her animals, and of course, I'm sorry. She always tells me I have mini ADD. So leaning towards maxi. So what I was going to say though, so here comes the most difficult challenge in her whole life. About 6 years ago, 6-ish, 7, when AJ overnight literally came down with multiple sclerosis and went from, a regular kid to all of a sudden like a wet noodle, couldn't move anything. 9 lesions on his brainstem. And you'll bear with me, AJ, there were times, as you're growing up, oh, my stomach hurts. Oh, I got a headache. Oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, I got this. Oh, I got that. Migraines. And there were times, and he said, he's a little bit of slacker. The truth was, each one of those things was an exacerbation on his brainstem that no two doctors, because they were a little different, put together as to what was going on with this young child. So even when that happened, Cindy her faith didn't waver at all. Not at all. And we had miracles. I said, we are so fortunate that we live in Cleveland, Ohio, with the Cleveland Clinic and the Mellon Center. The normal treatments for MS didn't touch AJ's MS. They had some things they did that did, and thank God, saved his life. She was a great teacher. She loves her students. One of the first phone calls I had to make was to the Dean of Kent, because she would be very upset since they're in the middle of the semester if the students, they're going to go online. She started, I was very involved in the beginning and in the graduate online nursing program, and they're going to go online and there's not going to be anybody there, and she would have been really upset if that wasn't taken care of. There's an organization in town called Womankind for people that don't have the resources to do all kinds of things, and she was a big supporter of that. She direct deposits from her paycheck to Matan Besacer and Beaker Holim, right. The other way around. Beaker Holim is first, Matan Besacer second. She loves both Sarah Spiro and Mrs. Landau. I mean, she didn't want to do it any other way because she didn't want to accidentally say, well, maybe this month I'm a little behind, I can't do the thing. Boom. It was her number one priority. So here comes this tragedy of her accident. And the rabbi said, when you've done everything you need to do, maybe that's the time you get called to God. Well, as all of you probably know, Cindy was flying was not her favorite activity on the planet. And when we were in the Grand Canyon and a couple other times, she passed on the helicopter rides. She got her helicopter ride. She wasn't aware of it, but she got it. The things that happened this 4 or 5 day period, when we first got the diagnosis, I think they called it a prognosis from Dr. Clancy. His job is not to sugarcoat things, nor did he. And, at first my children were, it was so damaging, but I am pretty much a realist. And Cindy believes in God, never wavering. So I said, there's got to be a reason. But the doctor said, the kids need time to catch up. You need time to catch up emotionally. Your parents need time to catch up emotionally. Cindy provided the time. She was stronger than the ventilator. It was unbelievable. She was breathing over the ventilator. This week, we've been fortunate. We've been in Florida a lot this year with her main boy, Cielo, her favorite horse. Nah, that's not true. Her most accomplished horse. There's no favorite. And her horse, this is the week of weeks in the showing, and her horse was the champion in her division. She left with a champion who never has to defend his title. Cindy had a very dear college roommate, Jan Eisner. They've been friendly, but 700 miles and different things in life. Finally, and unfortunately the Rav knows when it is better than I do, we're going to go for Cindy's 60th birthday, and we're going to go visit Jan in New Jersey. She's going to come with us to New York. We're going to see the cousins. And there was a little storm called Hurricane Sandy, and we couldn't go. Last week, her friend Jan says, I'm going to be in Wellington, Florida, where the horse show is. They spent an entire day together, and it was like 42 years or 40 years, never missed a beat. And I also want to go back to the day of the championship. Her beloved niece, Jennifer, who she adores like her daughters and like her son, like her children, got to spend the entire day of that event with her, and she couldn't have been happier that Jennifer was there. In fact, when Jennifer gave up riding, she had a horse. She called Aunt Cindy and said, Aunt Cindy, I don't want to sell the horse to anybody out of the family. Can Lestat, who is now got Lerstadt for a name because that's how the grandchildren refer to him. There were a couple people, and I'm sorry for being long, but there were a couple people in our family that have had a little bit of they've been a little bit estranged for the last couple of years, and over ridiculous people that were very close. So my father called me one day, yesterday or the day before. It wasn't yesterday, it was Shabbos, 2 days ago. And, he's in Florida, he's 89, and he really cannot make the trip. He wanted to make the trip. He's bawling, he can't make the trip. He said, is there anything I can do for you? He said, well, Daddy, family, I'm so grateful that my family's with me. I would never make it without it, and it's so important, and this and that. And he said to me, would you give that person my regards? And I said, well, if that person calls you, will you take his call? He said, absolutely. Well, we all got busy with things, the doctor coming and this and this and this. Well, and for those of you who know my father, it was a huge stretch. My father decided to make the call first because he wanted to do that healing. That's one of the things my wife did while she was laying in intensive care. I'm almost done. The previous week when we came home on Sunday, a week ago today, the previous Shabbos, we went to shul at Century Village. Oh, my wife. At Century Village, they have this little hallway you go through, and the men's room's on the left, and the women's room's on the right, and they have like a pair of curtains that they separate so that they don't want people looking even indoors. So my wife and somebody must have had on blood thinners and must have bled all over one of the curtains. And like the second time we went to the shul, she was really uncomfortable with it. So she said, I want you to go to the store, and I want you to buy some curtains, and I want you to take them over to the shul and replace them, which of course I did. I was thrilled to do it because I love fixing and doing anything. So we did that. But she had told me that she was at the point in her life that almost everything she needed to do was resolved, and she was happier than she had ever been. She said, this is where I wanted my life to be. This is what I've always wanted, and that's where we were. So, one other thing. So I called Kent, and the dean said, well, I have to call HR, put her on family leave, and of course we did. I mean, so she said, no, she said, I'll take care of everything, but they might call you for a question or two, and they did. And so the HR person says, do you know that your wife has 1,100 hours of sick time? I said, no, and I'm certain my wife didn't even know she had sick time, because that's not something she would focus on, as some people know exactly to the hour. So I said, well, like, what does that mean? She says, well, that means she'll have 7 more months of pay, and you'll be on the benefits for 7 more months, which she carries our insurance. Well, in 7 months and a day, I'm going to be 65, and so she took care of me so I would be covered till I go on Medicare. That's what she does, even when she's lying in bed. So, with the 65 out there, Rabbi, she wouldn't want us to go out to a cemetery in the cold. She made sure that it's going to be wonderful. You know, she's always been a free spirit. She never did quantitative research. She always did qualitative. The numbers weren't important. She was fantastic to her students, but, you know, when she'd do a test and there's 20% for this and 8% for that and 12% for this and 15 and there's 4 questions, 6, 20, she would give them to me and say, would you please tell me what this person got? I said, okay. So we used to always say, you know, that like she's a helium balloon and I was the rock and tied down, and because I was grounded a little more and she was very much. So now, I was so privileged to have a life with her. There were times when things were really good and she would call me my dear sweet man, and I cherished that. So now that little helium balloon is floating up to Gan Eden, and she's being met, as has been said, by the 5 dogs that we've had, the 4 or 5 horses that are there already that she's been involved with her wonderful grandmother, and her beloved grandmother, who, first time Cindy took me to her grandmother's apartment on something little street off of Lee Road, and that was when my hair was like about here, and her grandmother looked right through that. She was right through that. And have a cheese Dalton, please. And so, and the reason I had this Perek Shir here, as the rabbi said, because this sits out on my counter. It sits on my kitchen counter. She reads it every day, A to Z. It's totally what was said. So 2 years ago, she lost a horse that unfortunately had to be put down. His name was Sir Walter. So my sweet love, you take that sweet Mr. Sir Walter and you gallop across that open field that's heaven. I am so grateful to have been your husband, and I love you. Thank you, everybody.
Please rise for Kel Mali Rachmi. I'd like to ask Dr. Moshe Levinger to please say the Kel Mali Rachmi.
Ele molei rachamim shochein bamromim hametzei menucha nechona al kanefei ashchino b'malos kedoshim utehorim kezohar orokia mazirim Esse nishmas Shendel Beila Bazalka Levi Shelcha Leolamo Bavur Shianachanu Mispalilim Biadas Korasni Yishmo Began Eden Tehei Menuchaso Lochein Balo Rachamim Yastirel B'Seiser Kindofov Leolamim V'yitzror Achayim Es Nishmoso Adonai Hu Nachalo Voso V'Sonuach B'Sholom B'Sholom Al Mishkovo V'Nomar Omein.
You may be seated. The burial will be at the Young Israel section of Mount Olive Cemetery on Aurora Road. Shiva will be observed at the Roller Home, 23202 Ranch Road in Beechwood. Mincha Ma'ariv will be at 6 p.m.